everyone. It's Thursday, February 6th, 2025, and it looks like we've got a bit of a messy weather situation brewing out there.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You're trying to get ready for the day and wondering if you have to deal with school closures and office delays.
Right.
So we're going to take a deep dive into that today. We're looking at two news sources,
Yeah.
focusing on winter weather hitting both the northeast A&D parts of Pennsylvania, so like a double whammy for some of you folks.
Right.
We've got one focused on North Jersey closures and another on Western PA, so let's jump right in.
Sounds good.
Let's start with North Jersey. They've got a winter weather advisory in effect from 4 a.m. until 1 p.m. with an expected 1 to 2 inches of snow and sleet accumulation.
Okay.
Not a ton, but the New Jersey DOT is still warning about the potential for icy roads during the morning commute.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Even with just a little bit of ice, things can get pretty dicey out there, especially during rush hour.
Absolutely, and it seems like a lot of schools in North Jersey are taking that to heart because we're seeing a pretty long list of closures.
Yep.
And it's across a bunch of counties, too. Bergen, Essex, Passaic, Morris, even some colleges are closed. Berkeley College and Seton Hall University.
Wow. So it's pretty widespread then.
It really seems like it. And it's not just schools either. A number of county and state offices are delayed as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Bergen County offices, New Jersey state offices, even the DMV.
Oh, the DMV? I bet some people are secretly happy about that closure.
Right? Maybe they'll get a snow day from dealing with paperwork.
Okay, so North Jersey is definitely feeling the effects of this winter weather.
Yeah, and I know you're interested in Western Pennsylvania, too.
I am, yeah.
So let's shift gears and see what's happening over there. It sounds like Western Pennsylvania is bracing for a potential ice storm. So that's a step up from just snow and sleet.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a different beast altogether. They've got a winter weather advisory for the whole area, but the Laurel Highlands and ridges are under an ice storm warning specifically.
Okay, so certain areas are going to be hit harder than others.
Exactly. They're predicting 1/4 to 1/2 inch of ice accumulation in those higher elevations. So we're talking about potentially hazardous travel conditions, even in areas with lighter icing.
That's a lot of ice. And I'm assuming schools are probably going to be affected there, too.
I would think so, but our source doesn't give specifics on school closures for that region.
Okay.
Best bet is to check local news or school websites directly.
All right, so we've got two regions, both dealing with winter weather, but Western Pennsylvania seems to be bracing for a bit more of a intense situation.
Yeah, definitely sounds like it.
It's wild how these weather systems can have such different impacts, even within a relatively small area.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really shows how complex and unpredictable weather can be.
For sure, and it highlights the importance of staying informed about local conditions, especially during these winter months.
Couldn't agree more. It's kind of crazy to think about all the ripple effects something like a snow day can have.
Yeah, definitely more than just kids getting a day off from school, right?
Exactly. I mean, think about the economic impact. For starters, when schools close, a lot of parents have to figure out childcare or maybe take time off work themselves.
Oh, yeah, good point.
So that can mean a dip in productivity and potentially lost wages.
And I bet businesses, especially those that rely on people actually going out, aren't too thrilled about this weather either.
You're right. Restaurants, retail stores, all those places are probably seeing fewer customers today.
Yeah, makes sense. And then there's all the money that goes into dealing with the aftermath, like snow removal and road maintenance.
Oh, for sure. Cities and towns have to spend a lot to keep things running smoothly in these conditions.
So it really is like a chain reaction hitting different parts of the economy.
Absolutely.
This also makes me think about the energy companies.
How so?
Well, with everyone cranking up the heat to stay warm, I bet they're seeing a surge in demand.
Yeah, that's a good point. Increased heating needs definitely mean higher energy consumption.
Which is probably good news for the energy providers, but it also puts more strain on the power grid, right?
Exactly. It makes them more vulnerable to outages and things like that.
Kind of reminds me of that huge blackout we had a few years ago. It was triggered by a winter storm. It's amazing how something like ice can just bring down an entire system.
It really highlights the importance of being prepared for these situations.
For sure. When we have severe winter weather, it's not just about staying warm. It's also about having access to those essential services, healthcare, communication, transportation.
Absolutely.
So what really stands out to you from these news sources about the importance of being prepared?
Well, I think that ice storm warning for the Laurel Highlands in western Pennsylvania is a major red flag.
Yeah, why is that?
That much ice could lead to some serious issues, down power lines, road closures, even injuries from falling branches.
Wow. Okay, so it's really important for people in that area to take this seriously.
Absolutely. They need to make sure they have enough supplies and a plan in place in case things get really bad.
So basically, everyone should have a winter weather emergency kit ready to go.
I think that's a good idea no matter where you live.
Okay, so what are the absolute must-haves for that kit?
Well, water is always at the top of the list, enough for drinking and cooking in case your water supply gets disrupted.
Right.
Non-perishable food items are also crucial things you don't need to refrigerate or cook.
Okay. Water, food. What else?
A reliable source of heat is essential, of course, especially if you lose power.
Like a space heater or something?
Exactly. Or a fireplace if you have one, even just plenty of warm blankets.
Okay.
And don't forget a flashlight and extra batteries in case the lights go out.
Right. Those are the basics. But what about other things that might be good to have?
Definitely medications, first aid, supplies, a way to stay informed about the weather, like a weather radio.
Good point.
And it's always a good idea to have a plan for charging your devices in case of a power outage.
Okay, so we've got the practical stuff covered, but I also feel like winter weather can really take a toll on our mental and emotional well-being, too.
Oh, absolutely. Being stuck inside for days can definitely lead to cabin fever, especially if you're not prepared.
So any tips for staying positive and entertained when you're snowed in or iced in?
I think it's helpful to have some indoor activities planned. Things like reading board games, catching up on movies or TV shows, basically anything that keeps you engaged and entertained.
And maybe some cozy blankets and hot chocolate to set the mood.
Exactly. Find ways to make the most of the situation. And remember, it's temporary. Eventually the snow will melt, the ice will thaw, and we'll be back to our regular routines.
That's a comforting thought.
You know, while we're on that note, you mentioned something earlier that I think we should circle back to.
Oh, what's that?
You were talking about the bigger implications of these winter storms, how they might be connected to larger climate patterns.
Oh, yeah. I was hoping we could delve into that a bit more.
Me too. I mean, we've been focusing on the immediate impacts, school closures and stuff, but it's important to zoom out and look at the bigger picture.
Exactly. It might sound a little out there, but I can't help but wonder if these snow days and ice storms are like a sneak peek into a future where this kind of disruption becomes more common because of climate change.
It's not out there at all. I mean, we can't say for sure that any specific weather event is caused by climate change.
Right.
But the fact that we're seeing more and more extreme weather, including winter storms, is definitely in line with what climate scientists have been predicting.
So these local events we're seeing in New Jersey and Pennsylvania could be part of something much bigger.
Exactly. And that raises some important questions about how we adapt to a world where this kind of disruption becomes more frequent.
Right. It's not just about stocking up on supplies anymore. It's about rethinking our infrastructure, our energy systems, even how we design our cities.
For sure. We need to move beyond just reacting to things and start planning ahead.
So what would that look like?
Well, on a personal level, it could be as simple as having a good emergency kit, knowing your evacuation routes, and having a communication plan with your family.
Okay, so being prepared as individuals, but what about on a larger scale?
On a community level, it means investing in more resilient infrastructure, like power grids that can handle extreme weather, maybe stricter building codes to make sure structures can withstand heavy snow or strong winds.
And I bet urban planning plays a role too, right? Like thinking about things like green spaces that can help absorb excess water and reduce flooding.
Absolutely. And designing transportation systems that are more adaptable to disruptions. These are all big challenges, but they're not impossible to solve.
It sounds like it takes a joint effort from individuals, communities, and governments.
Definitely. It's about working together to create a more sustainable and resilient future for everyone. And it all starts with understanding the connections between our daily lives and these larger global forces.
That's a really powerful takeaway from what started as a simple check on school closures.
It just goes to show that even the most ordinary things can be connected to much bigger issues, and that awareness can be really empowering. It helps us see our own choices and actions within a wider context.
It's pretty amazing to think that just checking for snow days, can lead to a conversation about climate change and the future of our cities.
It really shows how connected everything is. Like what we do in our own little corner of the world can actually have a ripple effect on the whole planet.
And the opposite is true too, right? These huge climate patterns we hear about, they're actually showing up in our everyday lives through things like these winter storms.
Exactly. It's a two-way street.
Oh.
And that's why it's so important to talk about this stuff, to make those connections between what's happening right outside our window and the bigger picture.
So where do we go from here? We've talked about the problem, the possibility of more disruptions because of extreme weather. What are some things we can do to adapt to this changing world?
Well, I think a big part of it is changing how we think about it. Instead of just reacting to things after they happen, we need to start anticipating and planning ahead.
That makes sense. But what does that actually look like?
Well, on a personal level, it could be as simple as having a well-stocked emergency kit, making sure, evacuation routes, and having a plan for how to communicate with your family if things go wrong.
Okay, so being prepared as individuals, what about on a bigger scale?
On a community level, it means investing in infrastructure that can handle these kinds of events. Things like stronger power grids and tougher building codes that can withstand heavy snow and wind.
And I bet urban planning is a big part of it too, like having more green spaces to help with flooding and designing transportation systems that can adapt to disruptions.
Exactly. Those are all key pieces of the puzzle.
Hmm.
These are definitely big challenges, but they're not impossible to tackle.
It sounds like we need everyone to work together, individuals, communities, and governments.
Absolutely. It's about collaborating to build a more sustainable and resilient future. And that all starts with understanding how our everyday lives are linked to these global forces.
Well said. We've covered so much today, from those hyperlocal details about school closures to some pretty deep thoughts about climate change and what it means for our communities. It's been a really amazing deep dive.
It has, and I hope our listeners are leaving with some new insights and things to think about.
I'm sure there are.
Hmm.
And as always, we want to thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery. Stay safe, stay warm, and keep those minds curious. We'll catch you on our next deep dive.